You asked for more, so here they are as we take a look at 5 completely free plugins that you can download and use in your productions today. Hi folks, I'm Mike and I hope you're well. I've got 5 more completely free plugins to tell you about today, a mixture of things like saturation, compression, even a free synthesizer. But before we get started, can I remind you, if you want to download any of these plugins, check the links in the description down below. Do make sure that they're compatible for your DAW and follow any instructions for installation that you may find. It's not always a standard procedure with these free plugins. Now let's get started with our first plugin, which can take a rather boring mono signal and spice it up a little. So if you've ever recorded something in mono with one microphone and you quickly want to make it sound like it was recorded with 2 microphones with that nice wide stereo effect, then this plugin is for you. It's from one of my favorite plugin companies, Voxengo, and it's called Stereo Touch. Now we're going to listen to this guitar that I recorded using one microphone first of all, without the plugin engaged. Then after a few moments, we'll listen to it with the plugin switch on. Make sure you're listening in stereo, either with headphones or through monitors. You're not really going to hear this through your mobile phone speaker. Okay, let's listen to this guitar first of all as it was originally recorded. And now with Stereo Touch. Okay, so you can hear that right away. It sounds rather pleasant, nice and wide. So let's have a look at some of the options we've got with this plugin. First of all, the delay time here. Now I've got it set to 40 at the moment. I think that makes it sound fairly obvious and you may like that effect. If you want it less obvious, then with a source like this, I would go down to around about, say, I don't know, around about 20 or so. Let's have a listen now. Let's bypass, then back on. Okay, so with it down there, it's a lot less obvious, but you can still hear the difference when I bypass it, yeah? So that's an important control there. Obviously, if you turn it right up, then you're going to sort of, you're not going to be fooling anyone. There's definitely going to be some delay there. Likewise, the gain is quite important. I find if you just turn it down a little from 0, it just helps to make it sound a little bit more realistic. Now, you also have the option to switch a second delay on. What I like to do with this is, you know, put the delay time a lot longer than the original. So I'll put the original back, not quite up to 40, let's say around about 30 or so. I've got this a lot longer and a lot quieter. Let's have a listen to this with that second delay on. Okay, so we get this sort of sense more of a bit of a larger room or something, as if we record it in a larger room there. So, you know, play around with that. You can definitely refine that to make it sound better. Now, something I find really, really important is using a high pass filter. So they've got one here. Essentially, so if you don't know, a high pass filter is only going to let the higher frequencies through. In other words, it's going to cut the low. It's sometimes called a low cut filter. What can happen sometimes with delay or reverb effects like that is you can get a bit of a low end build up. So it's handy to sort of cut that out and just be hearing the effect on the higher frequencies. I'll set it up around about here to 1,000 hertz there, and we'll have a listen to that. Switch it off. So it definitely helps to clean up that low end. Likewise, I find that a low pass filter, in other words, sort of allowing the lower end through and cutting the high end, can be helpful. This can help to get rid of some sort of harshness at the top end. I'll put it all the way up here at the moment so it's not sort of doing anything, and then we'll gradually bring it down and you can hear the difference. So all important controls there, but essentially very, very quick to set up. You're going to sort of get results from this very, very quickly. Definitely worth downloading if you need this type of effect. Now, a quick note on this one in terms of its usage in your door, because we can't make a stereo source on a mono channel, okay, and that takes a little bit of setting up. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to head over to the door that I'm using at the moment, which is Cakewalk here, okay, and what I'm going to show you actually applies to most doors, or if not all doors. When we first record something like this mono track that we can see here with the guitar, it will be a purely mono channel. So meaning that, you know, if we switch this effect on now, I'll bypass it and we play it. Switch on. You don't really hear that wide effect. It's just adding some delay to a mono signal, okay? It hasn't got anything, it hasn't got left and right channels to play with. And the eagle eye would have seen me switch this switch over here very quickly. In Cakewalk, we have the option of switching the channel from a mono channel to a stereo channel. It's called interleave here in Cakewalk. In other doors, it may be something different. But if we just switch that over again, and now it's a stereo channel, even though the recording was originally in mono, and now we can hear the effect. Now, just in case that's not an option for you in your door, another thing that you can do is actually send this to a bus, a stereo bus. So often indoors, when you create a bus, it's going to automatically be in stereo. And even though you send a mono signal to it, you can add the effects, the stereo effects to that bus. Let me show you what I mean quickly here in Cakewalk. I'll just drag out my buses over here. You can see I've already set up a guitar bus here. It's a stereo bus. And if I change the output of my original guitar track here, if I set the output at the bottom here to send through to that bus, I'll just get rid of the effect on the actual channel there, get rid of that. So it's a mono channel here, it's going through to this bus, which is in stereo, and we can apply and use the effect there. Okay, let's have a listen. So definitely you need to have that set up correctly if you're going to get the benefit of this plugin. Oh, by the way, if you're finding this video useful, could you go ahead and hit the like button for me? Do it right away so that you don't forget. If you're not finding this video useful, then, well, I'll tell you what, I'll let my regular viewers let you know in the comments down below what you should do with my videos if you don't find them useful. Now, if you do like this kind of content, make sure you subscribe and ring the bell so that you're notified about my other videos. Now, back to this video. So ROUGHRIDER from Audio Damage is a compressor which has been around for a while now, but it's now on version 3. It's seen some improvements over version 1 and 2 in terms of the UI and a couple of other features as well. So let's just discover this popular compressor from left to right. We start off with an input level here. That one should speak for itself. Then we have this control down here, which is switched on by default and giving you the full bandwidth. When you switch this off, there's actually a high-end roll-off, and it can have the effect of making it sound a little bit warmer. So I'm just going to play this drum bus, which I've got this applied to at the moment. We'll start off with it off, and then I'll switch it on. You can listen to the difference. So you can hear it's doing that high-end roll-off. You can especially hear it on the hi-hats there. Now, I'm not prone to criticizing free plugins at all. I think that's bad form. However, I do think that this should be sort of done in reverse. It feels a bit counterintuitive to me, like that you should turn on the full bandwidth. Surely you should turn on the high-end roll-off. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you think about that one. Moving on from there, we do have the ability to use an external source for the compression. So we've got an external sidechain, commonly, of course, used between, say, bass guitar and drums, so that the kick especially and the bass don't get in the way of each other. A nice feature here with the sidechain is that you do have a high-pass filter as well, and that can be handy when you've got sources, for example, where the low end may cause the compressor to kick in a bit too soon. So you can sort of filter out the low end, for example, a little bit there. So that's handy. Moving on from there, we do have a ratio control here, easy to use there. Then we have this sensitivity control, and I'm guessing that this is really just a threshold. So if we start all the way up here, I'll play these drums, and then I'll gradually pull it down so that the compression starts to kick in. So you can see it happening there in that sort of visual display there, which is quite handy. Then we have makeup gain. Now I know that this starts off at 5 dB extras. So if we bring it down here to 0, just be wary of this. This means that virtually as soon as you put the plug-in on a track, it's going to sound louder because that makeup gain is up by default. And I say do be wary because, of course, things that sound louder tend to sound better to us. And you may think, wow, right away, this makes it sound better, but it's just making it by default sound louder. So just be aware of that when you're using this plugin. Of course, we have some attack and release controls here. We can get the attack all the way down to 0 milliseconds there and really sort of crush things. Let's just do that quickly to those drums. And that sort of crushing reminds me that how handy the mix control is. So if you want to do some sort of New York style parallel compression, then the mix can come in handy. If you're really crushing something like that, you can take the original signal and then just blend in that that really sort of crushed or very, very compressed signal with it. Quite a handy technique. Often I use it on all kinds of things, but especially for drums it can be useful, and for vocals as well. And then we simply have an output level here. So if you haven't got this in your arsenal yet, I highly recommend you follow the links in the description and download ROUGHRIDER 3. So the snare is the set of wires which are tightly held against the lower skin of a snare drum. They kind of rattle or buzz, if you like, when you hit the snare drum, and it's what gives it its unique sound. Now those wires don't just rattle when you hit the snare drum, they'll also kind of sympathetically vibrate or rattle when you're hitting other drums in the kit, especially the kick drum, maybe the tom-toms as well, not so much the cymbals and things, of course. Now this plugin, SnareBuzz, seeks to add that kind of effect to a virtual drum kit and make it just sound that little bit more realistic and less sort of sterile and perfect. Let's have a listen to this bypass first of all, and especially have a listen for the kick drum. Okay, so it's all sounding a little bit sterile. Now, as I mentioned, especially the kick drum will affect that snare buzz. So I've got this plugin inserted on the kick drum. Let's have a listen again. Listen out for that snare buzz. Now you could make it more obvious than that. I probably wouldn't. This wants to be a sort of a subtle effect just to add to the realism. Now let's just have a listen to the kick all by itself with all of the other drums taken out. And then what I'm going to do is change this mix. I'm going to put it all the way up so that we can only hear that snare buzz. That's just going to help for me to demonstrate to you what some of these other controls do. So first of all, tightness. Let's play around with that and have a listen to the difference it makes to that snare. Starting off very loose. And then something I found makes a big difference is the snare type. Have a listen to that. Try and match it to the actual sort of sound of the snare, if you like, in your kit. Very hollow sounding, this one. So that's definitely worth playing around with. Then the other thing which is really, really useful is playing around with the mic distance. We can change it here. You'll see the mic moving around further away and closer. And then also the type of room that we're in. So have a listen now. So a really quick and easy to use plugin. I definitely think it adds something if you haven't got that feature in your drum plugin. And as I say, I'd probably add it to the kick and a little bit to the toms as well. Hercules 2 is a free synthesizer plugin, which, if I'm honest with you, I don't think is the best of them around, but I do have a very specific reason to recommend it to you. We'll get onto that in a moment. But first of all, let's just have a quick listen to how this sounds. I've put together this demo in the last sort of 30 minutes or so, so everything you're going to hear is coming from Hercules. Have a listen. I definitely feel like I'm going back to the 80s now. So why would I recommend this to you? Well, primarily because it's so simple to use. There's not lots of sort of hidden things going on here. And if you're new to synthesis and you really want to have a little bit of a playground to try out some ideas with and learn the basic controls of synthesis, then I definitely would recommend downloading this and giving it a try. It's very simple. We've just got a couple of oscillators here, OSC 1 and 2. We can change the type of oscillation here. We can add a number of different voices, and we can change the octave, detune it, change some things about the panning, the stereo width, etc. So we've just got those two oscillators. We've got a couple of LFOs, 1 and 2 here as well, which we can see with simple controls. We've got some basic envelopes here at the top, an ADSR envelope, which is key to most synthesis. So if you want to learn about that, there's a good place to start. And we've got ADSR envelopes as well for a filter, and also a pitch envelope here as well. So not much more to it than that. I think new for this version are the effects, which you can see in the middle here, which is a delay and a chorus effect. And the only kind of hidden thing with this is the routing. This is where we can sort of set up some modulation, for example, using the LFOs and the OSCs. Now, if none of what I've just said and all of these acronyms don't make any sense to you whatever, and you want to learn about it, then probably downloading Hercules, doing some reading and trying it out here is a really great start. GSat Plus is a tube saturation plugin, handy for adding that little bit of color to an otherwise kind of sterile signal. I've got it applied to the acoustic guitar, which I was using at the beginning of this video. Let's just have a quick listen to that so we can refresh our ears. And then while we're listening, I'll flick off the bypass switch so that you can hear the effect of the plugin with these current settings. Let's have a listen. So we can hear the effect there right away. The main controls that we'll be using are down the bottom, so I'll just take a look at those first. Interestingly, for this plugin, we can apply where in the stereo field the saturation is applied. We can change that here. It's applied in stereo at the moment, but we could apply it to the left or the right, or the mid or the side. Let's just have a listen between the mid or the stereo, the mid and the side. So starting off with the stereo, going to mid, so that may definitely be something that you'll want to muck around with. Then we have the tube character here. I've got it set to warm at the moment. We've got crisp, classic, clean there as well for different types of effects. Have a listen to some of those. So you can hear a little bit of a difference there. Now we can change the number of stages. So this is basically the number of tubes that we're working through. So we've got between 1 and 5 there. Then fluctuation, which if I mess around with this, it sort of adds a little bit of randomness to the effect of these of this saturation here. You're going to hear it drastically as I turn it right up to 100. It almost has, dare I say, that effect that you may get from some tape saturation at times. Let's have a listen. Again, I like to have it just down there, sort of fairly subtle, so there's a little bit of something changing there, but not too obvious. Is nice, in my opinion, for this guitar. Then we have the amount of control. We have controls over the amount of odd and even harmonics which are added. So if you don't know, odd harmonics are definitely going to add to the warmth of something. Even basically is going to make it sound a little bit more aggressive. It's not going to be too apparent here, but have a listen. We'll tone it down and up. That's going to become a lot more obvious with different sources and different settings. But just so you know, that's the basic controls for that there. Then moving up, we have some control over the clipping. Here's a clip sealing control. I'll just gradually bring that down. You'll hear the effect. So we can make it sort of distort at different levels by using that. Some oversampling controls. We've got 2 times and 4 times oversampling. Essentially this, if you don't know, means that the signal is temporarily increased to a higher sample rate so that it can be processed in a more clean way with less artifacts and things. It does use a lot more CPU when you use oversampling, but it can really help to clean up the results. I like it here. It sounds nice and crisp with ×4 processing there. Interestingly, up the top where we see these VU meters, these are not really sort of saturation controls, but I have to say, if you just needed a free VU plugin, this would be kind of cool if you had the saturation switched off here. You've got these VU meters, you've got the ability to calibrate them here, so that 0 is different levels in dBFS. Then you have the ability to listen in stereo, left, right, mid, and side. Let's just have a listen through those. So this is kind of handy controls regardless of whether you're using the saturation controls down here or not. So definitely worth grabbing hold of GSat Plus if you want to add a little bit of tube saturation to your signals. I'd like to ask you a question. What's the best free plugin that you've discovered so far? Something you use a lot or is just simply amazing to you? Let me know in the comments down below. Maybe I'll feature it in a future video. Don't forget to check the links in the description for the plugins that I've mentioned in this video. And also, while you're there, check out my link to patreon.com, where for as little as $1 per month, you can help me help you by making more videos like this. And I'll see you in the next video.